But let us quick Tochinil here and make our way to Tartarus next. We'll even build in the same caveats as before. If things look sketchy here, we don't have to clear this branch now, and we can, of course, just make our way to another section of the game if things start looking sketchy, which is a potential option, especially with the silent specters that we mentioned earlier. They're always a little bit of a tricky enemy to navigate on a character that is so reliant on our ability to cast spells. Not too bad to start off here. Just keep making our way. I should have double checked. We are at full negativity resistance. Perfect. And the Doomhound. So I kind of forget. It's been a while. What does your howl do again? Yes, enemies will come to it. That's the part I thought. Oh, but that's it. Okay, I actually thought that they had another negative effect that took place, but it's essentially a miniature version of the marked effect that we get from traps. So we'll actually stand our ground for a little bit here, because we will have enemies coming our way in numbers here. Able to handle all of them. Again, we're very much happy with our faster healing thanks to regeneration off of our amulet. That will very much be saving us a whole lot of trouble as we rest up between fights. Oh, and you know what? We haven't explored too much here, so we're gonna also make our way back up the stairs, and let's fix one of our issues here, shall we? I want to go, actually the easier way to do this is going to be to find Abyss, and I think it was the Depths 1 gate. Indeed it was. Let's go pick up those magic mapping scrolls that we left behind. Completely forgot about that. We do have 9 of them as well, but that will come in handy, almost assuredly so. Okay. Finally remembered something before the critical time when there was no point in going back for it. That's fantastic. And now, without further ado, let's go back. Oh me, oh my. Mistakes were made. Let's maybe even head out the opposite direction, since we seem to be going very far away without finding a stairwell, and definitely rewards us immediately for doing so, as we come across the stairway much more quickly this time around. Jeez Louise. Can't believe we explored so much of the level when it was just next door the whole time. Silly old me. And onwards and downwards, as it were. Again, not using auto-explore unless we get too bored here, if just so that we can try and expedite the process, as well as do kind of a bit of a concentric ring explore pattern. Because if there is a stairwell right next to one of our gates, that's much more preferable than having to cross the majority of the level just to find our way down, as we saw on the first floor of Tartarus here. Oops. Let's definitely kill with the, or deal with the Tsitsimiddle. I think that's a half-decent attempt at the pronunciation. I like that the game challenges me on some unfamiliar combinations of consonants. I've always enjoyed trying my very best to pronounce things as correctly as possible, though readily will admit that I will oftentimes make mistakes in that department. We're also not getting very lucky with the stairs here, so I'm going to resort to auto-explore to just zip us around with a bit less real time taken in the tedium here, especially since after exploring this much of the level, there's a good chance that huge brain fart there. There's a good chance that all of the stairwells are just grouped together at one of the far reaches of the area. At least I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case here. So we'll deal with all of the enemies that have been drawn this way thanks to the howl from our hound there. Apparently we're getting nothing but tits and middles in the majority of our spawns, which I don't hate. Besides the fact that they torment, we're not dealing with too much trouble, especially since they've oftentimes shown up just a single target at a time. And back to Auto Explore to save me some sanity here. And we are also looking at a decent place in terms of our money once more. After spending a whole lot trying to get through a couple different the previous areas, we're already nearing back up to the 16,000 mark, which is spectacular. I will gladly take that. Where are you? At this point, it's no longer worth a magic mapping scroll, but I almost wish that I'd done so just to save ourselves a little bit of time at the beginning of our journey. That is fine. Tab fighting our way through most of Hells, like you do. Hey, and our first Silent Spectre gets summoned in. So yeah, as you can see, they have this huge radius of silence here. So this is where we definitely don't want to run out of statue form, and we're going to be very much relying on just the good old stone paws to take those buddies on. The final section of this area, I should actually swallow my drink before I start talking. Jeez Louise. Just absolutely inhale some of that. But the final section of Tartarus is teeming to the brim with those Silent Spectres wandering about. So definitely is a nice little testing period there, seeing that we are at least capable of dealing with them. It's almost tempting to tape this trapdoor down with how long it's taken for us to find the stairway, but let's be a little bit safer and just make sure that we do our due diligence and find a safe stairwell down. The trapdoor, of course, gives us all of the disadvantages of getting shafted with none of the advantages. Because normally you're hoping that you'll be able to skip a few floors of hell. Unfortunately, with trapdoors, you don't get that, and you will just be most likely placed right into the center of a den of enemies immediately. And there we go. Finally, we see some good luck with the stairwell right next to our entrance down. Perfect. It's almost too bad that this character has Maxwell's capacitive coupling, because it's always interesting to learn all the different ways that you have to deal with some of the specific big bads in the different areas. For example, in Tartarus here, I'm blanking on their name off the top of my head, but it's like Eshkegel or something like that. The biggest issue with Eshkegel in general, especially if you're playing on a bit of a fighter character, is how high their evasion is. So I've oftentimes resorted to things like nets or just any kind of unavoidable damage as well in order to take them on. Fortunately, we won't have to deal with any of those problems on this character in particular, but it is still good to know for the future. And for anyone who is trying this out on their own on a different set of abilities. It's one of the key components that I always think of when I think of dealing with the end of Tartarus. You need some form of dealing with a ridiculously high evasion stat. Oh, hello friends. Bunch of summoned pals. And unfortunately, here on Tartarus 5, we do not get the same luck we saw on the floor above. I guess 2 floors above, really. And no easy answers. Fortunately, on a Felid, we can do this against Silent Spectres. Normally, you're kind of stuck in the Silence Cloud the second you run into one. But hey, if we're non-statue form, we at least have our speed up, and we're able to slowly but surely run away until we're able to recast that and get ourselves into a relatively safe position. Because we made our way down here with the help of a shaft, we're at the stage where I'd like not to have to retreat. Still want to leave it open as an option and be completely ready to take said option, instead of risking life and limb out of a mixture of pride and convenience. But it is definitely a bit of a convenient thing to not have to find a stairwell on that level that we managed to skip. And here we are in Tartar 7. So this is where we're happy to have our magic mapping scrolls back. We'll immediately use that to see what kind of layout we're dealing with. There are just a few set situations that you usually end up in. And this one is not too bad. So there will be silent specters wandering the level throughout the area, and because of the maze-like labyrinth corridors that this place sets up, it's oftentimes kind of hard to track them down, especially as they wander about. And even through walls, that silence aura will be affecting us. So it is important that we do as much of our homework as possible and try and take all those buddies out before we face Ishkegel themselves. We will, of course, also do my standard plan of taking a quick look at the wiki entry for the area here, because it's better to be safe than sorry, and you don't want to run into something completely unexpected when down here. Summoners are always a bit of a pain, but not too bad. Definitely take the time here to try and regenerate all of our magic points. Though of course, we'll be dealing with the hordes of hell descending upon us as we go. This is somewhere where I will once again make my way into the menu here, turn off auto pickup on gold for the time being, and we'll just ignore that for the most part, unless we see some truly huge piles starting to accumulate. Shouldn't need the money anyway. We should be okay to just keep exploring the old-fashioned way. We do want to practice good sense here. We'll clear out the whole area. We could probably make our way just towards the final section without too much ado, or without too much risk, really. But it's definitely safer, all things considered, to be as careful as we can and just make sure we clear out all these enemies. Even if just so that if we have to make a quick retreat out from that final fight with a teleport scroll, we won't be dropped immediately into another horde of enemies. Instead might have at least a chance at relative safety, as I don't even activate statue form and just take on a bone dragon itself. Thanks to our high evasion, that wasn't nearly as suicidal as it otherwise might have been. And that statue form is truly running out at the most inopportune moment, especially when I just tap on that auto fight key like a complete fool. It's like I'm not even recognizing the dangers of the area even a little bit, just going haphazardly full throttle here. Which in some ways is a bit of a good thing. It shows that we have a character that is able to handle the majority of the combats in the area with ease. The same will not be said necessarily for what's to come. Not too bad though. Hello, my skeletal warrior friend. Come one, come all once more here. I almost wish that we had chosen the flying ring for our third pip of resistance to negativity, if just because it make this area slightly more convenient. Which is silly in many ways. At the end of the day, we should just be happy to make it through in as safe of a process as we possibly can. But hey, I get impatient, and in some ways we are almost saving ourselves some danger, because the more impatient I get, the more chance I have of completely ignoring good sense and doing something incredibly stupid. Wouldn't be the first time, wouldn't be the last either. But search through the entirety of the labyrinth here, if just to find ourselves some half-decent treasures, This amulet not being one of them, if I'm being honest with ourselves here. Int +7, not quite as good as what we're already wearing. Nothing else on there reaches out to me. We'll of course take a manual of ice magic, just in case we ever do want to take the next step in that department. In fact, the more manuals we can find, the better, because we do have vast amounts of experience at our disposal over the course of the late game here. I'm very shocked that we haven't ran into any Silent Spectres, or not even necessarily ran into them, but even found ourselves under the effects of their aura. Because I would usually expect to have done so by now, especially once we get to these spiral sections. But I'm not complaining, at the very least. Hello, my tits middle friend. These buddies are something we're going to be looking out for later in the game when we do get Necromutation online, because they're the truly scary enemy for a late game necromutated player. Jeez. Brain, work with me here. But the main issue with them, of course, is that they have the ability to cast Symbol of Torment and Dispel Undead. So no matter which form you're in, you're going to be taking heavy damages, and that's a bit rough. Because we made it to this treasure vault, I'm going to ransack it clean, even though we're leaving gold everywhere else on the floor just lying around. But it's for the idea of it all, really. Okie dokie. I don't like getting howled this close to Eshkagul's lair. I'm sure they're coming out for us right now. In fact, it makes me immediately go into planning mode here. We could read a teleport. We wanted to just make our way out of here as soon as possible. I'm going to pop around the corner to try and avoid the torment as much as we can. Jeez Louise, get out of here. And ideally, Eshkagul does not round this corner anytime soon. Perfect. It's always the chance, of course, but managed to luck our way out, get through that howl without too much concern, because once more, we do want to clear this area as much as we possibly can before dealing with the end vault. Not least because I want all the treasures. Aha. See that door being open? Not great, to say the least. Hello friends, let's continue wandering back this way. We put a little bit of space between us and the end vault. There's a greater chance that noise won't reach all the way there, which is the name of the game. Huh, a white wielding +4 scimitar and the +3 chainmail of absence and the amulet of the greedy. What makes that white so special? Why do they get all the cool stuff? Nothing that really affects us, of course. And in fact, Amulet of the Greedy, sorry Gozag, as much as this does represent your true virtues, I'm probably just going to throw this trash right back on the floor, because that negative telly is not something we're looking for. You want to come to me, you shadow demon? Silly, silly shadow demon. Perfect. And now we go back to the tap, 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 tap. Clearing out our other treasure vault here. Should just try and kill off the summoners here, especially since I want to do so before our howl comes in. Perfect. And this is where all the artifacts were hiding, eh? I see now, game. Int +6, Dex +2. I'm afraid Joluse is going to go right back on the ground. And then we pick up the Amulet of Fragile Peace. Acrobat and some minor stat improvements. Again, not something that will make the difference, most likely here. So we'll leave that alone for the time being. Oops. Wasn't even in statue form for the start of that fight. Yeah, all things considered, this is going much better than I had any hopes that it would. I'm guessing one of those scythes is distortion and I wasn't paying attention. I'm honestly shocked that we didn't just get immediately banished the abyss, because it truly seems like that is the go-to solution, or outcome rather, on this character in general. It's funny how your view of the Abyss changes over the course of the game, because for the first like 20 levels, you're extremely scared of the possibility. Once you're at a comfortable position where you're able to handle most of the Abyss, and especially after you get that Abyssal Rune, you start to think, oh no, it just doesn't matter if I make my way down into the Abyss, because we can always survive and make our way out. And then finally, the final evolution of the process is crossing your fingers and hoping that you do get sent to the Abyss, because so many of the threats that we're facing in this stage of the game are much stronger than anything we could possibly have to face down there. But, ooh, that's a cool Kraken. Again, only ever faced the regular ones before. I don't know if it's just the way my luck is always sorted out, or if it was a new addition. But regardless, it's kind of cool. Not too bad. Even a pair of Sentinels is not the end of the world for Oville 91 here, the greatest cat that ever lived. And now's about the time that I think I will make my way back towards the vault. We're going to want to call as much attention as we can without bringing Urshkagul out, because we need to clear off all of these little buddies before we're going to be able to deal with them in the classic fashion here. The Antaeus method, if you will. Yes. In fact, let's clear out our exclusions. And where are you at? Hello, Urshkagul. Sorry, been pronouncing your name wrong this entire time. That's very much my bad. But another high health enemy, Bolt of Cold. Bit of a pain. Summon to its middle. I kind of forgot about that. That's going to be annoying. As well as Silence. So that's something that we have to look out for. She may just take away our ability to teleport out of here whatsoever. But we could just cross our fingers and hope we get lucky. Currently, doesn't see us. We have a decent amount of gold lying around. In fact, if we go in here, do we have our gold aura up still or no? Doesn't look like it, so we're not going to be able to rely on distraction turns this time around. So we could bring out a bunch of summons of our own that will hopefully deal with her summons while we charge up our capacitive coupling. Or we could just start doing so now and hope we get lucky. Fortunately, once we cast it, I don't think Silence will dispel the effect, so we almost hope that she wastes a turn casting Silence instead of summoning in some friends. You can also see, as mentioned earlier, the ridiculous evasion on that son of a gun. That's why oftentimes we don't want to have to fight in the old-fashioned way. Well, let's go for it. 1, 2, 3. It's stupid how easy that is. It's not even fair. I don't think that should be allowed. But Manual of Shields, no use whatsoever. And there we go, rune number 7. In fact, I kind of forgot that I set up a rune counter here. I should be editing that. Skip 6, head right to 7. Not too bad. Well, and there we are. Guess let's just get the heck out of here, shall we? It's that easy, folks. I feel like this game is trying to lure me into a false sense of security, where I'm going to think every branch is going to go this smoothly, and have a rude awakening at some point. Or not. Or the game could just hand it to me, that'd be kind of nice. But okie dokie. Where do we wish to head next? I think I am kind of still leaning towards finishing all of the hells here. And then hopefully in the last couple areas we find some good resistance treasures that will help us get through the rest of the game coming up. Alternatively, or on top of that rather, we do want to potentially take a quick look at spells that we wish to have at our disposal here, Necromutation being one of them. By the time we get to Tomb, it's going to be much easier to handle the large crowds of mummies, and by extension their death curses, if we have the ability to turn undead ourselves. It's funny, without capacitive coupling, generally as a spellcaster, my favorite method for dealing with all of these buddies is usually a Spellforge Servitor. Spellforge Servitor slinging out Lahudib's Crystal Spears is unparalleled amounts of damage as well as mana efficiency, because we don't have to cast quite as many spells, and with the high health pool that all of these big baddies have, it's definitely almost a necessity to have some method of dealing out way more spell power than you otherwise could possibly manage on your own. So maybe with that in mind for our future, and since we're starting to max out all of our skills, in fact, while we weren't paying attention here, unarmed combat maxed, fighting almost maxed, and evocations did hit that level 20 without too much problem. So let us put on all skills. I want to start training necromancy up, probably to at least somewhere like 16. This stage of the game, that's not going to be asking for too much, and we'll check in every once in a while, see how that necromutation is coming along, and see if we have to make any runtime decisions. On the other side of it, we could now take this manual of transmutations. I almost don't see why not. 592 gold is a pittance for us at this stage in the game. Ring of Positive Energy, again, besides the joke answer of just wanting a little bit of positive energy in our lives here, won't do us much good in the long run. So let's pick that up, grab that son of a gun, and see where that puts us in terms of cost. Essentially the same cost as turning Earth Magic up from just below 12 to 13. Or is that even from this point to 12? No, I think that's for a full level. This cost here is something I've never really bothered fully acquainting myself with in general. I just know that it has a bit of a logarithmic scale, and as you go up in the skill levels, it takes a huge amount more experience in order to make the next step on the journey. But let's focus necromancy, turn transmutations on, because we might as well bring that up, keep that spell power rising, maybe even just to 24. And on the flip side, I'm tempted to train a little bit of air magic as well, just so we get that spell power on capacitive coupling edging on up there, taking less and less turns for that buddy to charge up. And next up, I think is going to be the City of Dis. Might be a bit scary, especially with the relatively low health pool of a Felid. A lot of the heavy hitters here are going to pack quite a wallop, but I still feel slightly more comfortable than the sheer amount of spawns that I should just quickly, instead of constantly blanking on your name. Ooh, it's Asmodeus in Gehenna, right. That's why the crawl wiki is so useful, not just for reminding myself of in-game things, but also to prevent my own lack of memory from stumping me for an extended period of time at the very least. Rocks fall on me out of nowhere. Don't do that. That's not necessary. In the occasional run, you'll find yourself at such a surplus of magic mapping scrolls that you can actually just map out every single level of all the hells here, which can definitely be a nice thing in its own right. Just saves you a whole lot of trouble of searching around for each and every one of these downstairs. And now that I've taken a moment to recalibrate your brain here and remember, we no longer need this resistance to negative, and instead we'll probably be better suited having a nice mixture of resistances across the board. So I might switch back to the ring Nadis. We do have to remember that our fire resistance leaves something to be desired when we do so, but other than that, it's a half-decent trade-off, if just for the resistance to corrosion and the slight statistical advantage that we gain. And so our journey continues. Hellions are definitely a scary enemy in their own right. That was that glowing purpley red fellow down there The nice thing about them is as long as we have either unavoidable damage or fairly good chances of hitting, they have such a low health pool that Manifold Assault's ability to hit across the entirety of the screen does absolute wonders for making sure that we don't have damnation being called on us for too much of the time, at the very least. So we explore that entire half of the level to no avail. I'm getting exceptionally unlucky with the number of downstairs that we find throughout. Come on, buddy, where are those downstairs? Well, if the game's gonna be difficult, I guess that's okay. We'll just explore the entirety of all of the first floor of Dis to find even a single stairwell. Ah, see, this is where I was going a bit too quickly here. Hell Sentinels are one of the scary things that we'll be finding down here in relatively high numbers. That hurling of damnation, once again, is absolutely brutal. Not only that, but they do, of course, hit pretty heavily on their own on top of that. We're always going to be hoping that we find them in conjunction with a whole lot of weaker enemies just so we can get that gold distraction going. And as I mentioned, you do want a very nice mixture of resistances for the area here, because as you've no doubt noticed by now, we're dealing with a whole lot of corrosion effects, as well as a bit of a mix and match of the more traditional resistances, or elemental damage types, I guess is the better way to put that. So it's definitely necessary to have all of the tools that you'll potentially need at your disposal. And we're going to be very careful taking out this final room because Quicksilver dragons are not my bag, baby. Fortunately, we very much rely on statue form, so each and every one of those Quicksilver dragons has the potential to take us from a position of complete comfort to absolute panic mode in just a couple turns. Fortunately, we're able to face pretty much both of those in almost just 1v1 combats. That's not too bad. And let's see, Iron Golems got a new sprite since I was last here as well. I kind of forgotten that I hadn't been down into the extended late game at all in 0.27 yet. But shouldn't be too bad for this character. In general, I've definitely had characters that have been much more scared of fighting these buddies. And unfortunately for us, based on the position of our enemies, I think this trap is gonna be hit. So we might be in for a wee bit of a dangerous situation here, but we'll take the mark and we'll just try and take on all these buddies as best we can and whatever else may come. Should be okay, all things considered. We've at least, again, cleared out most of the floor, so I guess there's the silver lining. Sure, it was a bit of a pain in the butt, but hey, had most of the floor explored, so that's kind of cool. We also never bothered turning back on our gold pickup. There's actually a decent chunk of change just lying around here. Interesting. I think we're fine though with our just shy of 18,000 gold. At least for now. We always know that we can come back here and not even have to fight stuff, but just run around picking up gold for a few hundred turns if things go poorly. Speaking of turns, I was kind of curious about our Zot timer. It's up to 26,949. As we dive through the branches of hell, we're adding a whole lot of turns to the timer without really spending too many of them in the process. Which is nice. It means that if we do find a situation where we're constantly needing to back out and heal, got all the time in the world, no concerns whatsoever. Just living the easy breezy lifestyle. Hello friends, compatriots. Welcome one and all. Let's pick up a little bit more money. I want to pop over that 18,000 mark. It's very satisfying. And let's see what else. Another thing that we haven't exactly been demonstrating so far over the course of this run, thanks to the extremely powerful build that we've managed to accumulate over the course of it, is the fact that with Gozag in particular, one thing that I'll often do on the average character going into extended late game is be using Potion Petition a whole lot more often. Essentially every time that we run into the final branch areas of the different hells and face off against each of the lords of said areas, I will normally try my best to Potion Petition for, haste, might, brilliance, the whole shebang, getting the whole complement of bonuses just to make those fights go a bit more smoothly. But thus far, hasn't been too necessary. Though I want to say that with a bit of anti-comedic timing karmic justice thrown in there, because I'm ready and willing for all of that to change. And I'm not growing cocky game, I promise. Don't punish me for my overconfidence, please. We'll keep heading through this. Oops. That was another change that was made for, an Iron Giant. This is what I was thinking of when we saw the Iron Golems earlier. These are the scary ones, because of the Harpoon Shot mixed with Iron Shot. Definitely poses a bit of a threat, and Throw Ally, much like we see with Robin in the early game, can completely cut off our escapes, especially in very narrow corridors and things of the like. But fortunately, we do have pretty solid defenses across the board, and that was probably one of the more ideal situations to have to deal with said Iron Giant. And so we'll hope that we continue to see that kind of luck in the future. Because otherwise, that is usually an enemy that puts me into a bit of a full-on panic state. Much like these gosh darn Sentinels. And I take that money just to laugh over the corpse of our fallen foes. And we'll take these enemies out. I believe for a moment there we saw a negative move in our status effects. I believe that's one of the unique hell effects, or hell curses as it were, that can affect us in this branch. Definitely, if you're currently in a position of panicked retreat, it can be absolutely debilitating, but for the most part, on this character in particular, I'm hoping we won't have to worry too much about that hell effect causing us stress and pain. Here we go, finally finding our next downstairs. Normally, I'm definitely hoping to find stairwells a little bit more frequently than we've been seeing in this game. Because if you get really lucky, you can just consistently walk down a stairwell immediately into the next downstairs and just breeze your way through the entirety of the hells, taking no time at all. What do I think about the Hell rework? So yeah, Cactus Heart, I haven't actually tried it out myself yet. I've heard a decent number of things from viewers over the course of the last while here, ever since that changes were made public. But in general, I'm definitely a fan of the idea. I do find most of this stage of the game fairly tedious. Like, I'm not running into too many problems here. Everything that we've run into so far is something that we've had to face already in the game, and it's more so just annoying constantly having to deal with mobs and monsters popping in. They're all just popcorn that you can handle no problem, but they take just time, effort, tedium. So in general, I do like the idea of making the hell effects a bit harder, but a bit more specific to each branch and niche in certain ways that make your life difficult. And plus, honestly, I have no problem in making them harder. In general, I find that most extended late game runs end because of that said tedium and just kind of losing focus, and then you run into a bad problem or bad RNG where it's just unlucky roll after unlucky roll, and then there goes your run. Doesn't feel super satisfying most of the time, versus if it's something that's a bit more of a straightforward challenge, I can definitely get behind that, and I think it will feel more satisfying to not only make it through, but even when you die in the hells, it'll feel like you have a bit more agency because things have gone the way they were, I guess, designed to do. Though I'm talking a lot of game without, again, having experienced it myself. So maybe by the time that version comes out from Trunk into the official release, I'll be singing a different tune, but we'll have to see. And also, hello, Cactus Hurt. Nice to see you around again. I hope you're having a great day here. Do you have any opinions on your own on the new changes? Do you play a lot of Trunk or not? Because I definitely spend the majority of my time playing in the active branches, whatever the current version of the game is. And here's where those unlucky rolls come in, as we get put down to decently low health, and then summons coming in right at the worst possible moment. Of course, even the fact that we got down that low in terms of our health was largely due to just a number of unlucky torments coming in. No, you're terrible, so you don't get the experience hell. Not yet. Any day now. I'm sure you'll make your way down. To be fair, I too don't often experience the hells in this game. Especially with my commitment to just trying to get a win with every species in the game, I've found myself a lot less tempted to go into the extended late game as of late. So I'm almost excited at the opportunity that this run has given us to revisit it and remember what it's like to go through this area. I almost should just purposely hamstring myself and not use capacitive coupling, but I don't think I will, because I really want this cat to get through with the win. I'm very excited that we've even made it this far, and that most of the hells so far have been going fairly well. It's not what I expected, both the getting here in the first place and the way that the hells has gone thus far, and so I will gladly take whatever the game wishes to give me. It's again tempting to take that trapdoor if just to save us the annoyance of having to explore the rest of the area here, but not quite willing to risk things unnecessarily, and will instead just play it a wee bit safer and try and find real stairs down. This is why we don't move quickly in the hells, folks. As soon as just a couple turns of damnation come our way, definitely changes the pace pretty quickly there. As you can see, hitting the down key without really thinking about my surroundings. Not a great look. But hey, didn't quite kill us, and even if it did, we do have some lives to spare. I mean, ideally, yeah, of course I'd like to save them for the truly difficult enemies and all the brutal encounters that are to come. If I can have 2 lives by the time we get into Tomb, that will be very much ideal. Because I plan to potentially die multiple times in our attempts there. It's a Scythe of Distortion here, so we might get banished to the Abyss, but does not turn out to be the case. And now we just have to clear out all the rabble here. We'll get to finally head down once more into the final section. Wow, okay, so even with having to explore the majority of these floors in their entirety, we still, at the end of the day, got through them a bit more quickly than the previous 2 areas. And here we are, Disc 7. So let's use our magic mapping once more, immediately block ourselves from the fortress. In fact, if we want to take a look, you can see that there's a bit of an entrance area, a couple small vaults either side, and this is where things will get interesting. I believe that Disvader is the enemy with the Staff of Torment, so we're going to potentially be running into a decent amount of torment. We may, even for the final section of this area, wish to switch back to our triple positive energy setup, if just to alleviate some of the torment damage that will be lofted our way. Because it is a pretty sizable depreciation hitting that last pip. As is probably even evident from how much more trouble we've been having with the tormentors we've been running into over the course of the last 20 minutes or so here.